Hi, welcome to Planetary Calendar's Astro Portraits. I'm Ralph Lahni, one of the astrologers. This is part of our series on actresses that do action roles. And this is a bit of a departure. Early on, we did Kate Winslet's chart because her chart was so different from everybody else's that it showed the comparison. Like, she's not a person who does action roles. I think she's got the sun, moon, and rising all in Libra. She's completely Venusian, and where these action roles, we tend to find people who have strong Mercury and Mars ruled signs, and those planets are significant. This chart that we're doing now, which is Zendaya, who's also the youngest person that we've featured in this series, born September 1st, 1996, a Sunday, at 6:01 p.m. at Walnut Creek, California, is kind of spans the line. She's not really the classical action person, though she's done some interesting things. I mean, for instance, in the Greatest Showman with Hugh Jackman, she learned how to do, swinging from the trapeze. Even despite the fact that she's afraid of heights. She's done roles like this because she's had to, but she's not someone that they automatically go to and think this is going to be a role. But remember, she's born in 1996. She's really of a different generation. So it's very, very interesting. But she does have some of the mercurial and martial qualities, but she has much more of the Saturn and Venus. And that's why I said it spans it. She's born with the sun in Virgo. But it's in the 8th house, a martial house, the house related to Scorpio. So she has that mercurial quality of desire to, get into things, but it's in a house of power, the desire to use power. But whereas Mercury, because after all, it's, a Mercury-ruled sign. Mercury's in Libra, a Venus-ruled sign, right? Mercury's in Libra, a Venus-ruled sign in the 9th house. And part of fortune, conjunct the part of fortune and the North Node. Whereas Mars is in Cancer, conjunct Venus. In the 6th house, Mars, 25 degrees, Venus, 24 degrees Cancer. In the 6th house. So this is a person who's really actually very comfortable being very feminine, being very nurturing. Mars in Capricorn is a dignified planet in that the dignities relate to, every planet has 6 major dignities. Mars in Capricorn is the exalted ruler, so it's the external best friend. Mars in Cancer is what's called the fall position. It's basically the internal or introvert best friend or confidant position from Mars. So this is a person actually with Mars in Cancer. They're people who are very good at kind of being around other people. They like to snuggle. They like being close to people. They're very quick to, want to feed people. And she has Venus there as well. And Venus in Cancer is a lovely position. And it's very influenced by the fact that it's with a planet that is dignified. That it is a planet, when a planet's dignified, what it means is it has a very specific role. And so when you have a planet conjunct that, it influences that role. She has the sun in the 6th house. The Mars-Venus conjunction in the 6th house, the area of skills, Mars and Venus. This is someone who's learned a lot of this at home, or she feels very, she studies this a lot at home. She really likes her home life. Now, what's interesting is that when you first meet her, you don't really know who she is. We were just talking about Margot Robbie's chart, and when you meet her, you know right away who she is. She has all these planets right by the rising. But not so with Zendaya. She has at the rising Aquarius. And just above the horizon, in what's called the Gogolon spot, the place of high energy, Uranus. She's very sensitive. It's an Aquarius. She's very sensitive to the group around her. She's picking up the vibe of the group around her. She's picking up the electricity in the walls around her. She's very sensitized. She's kind of the epitome of that particular generation. Right above there is Neptune and Capricorn in the 12th house. And that's interesting because he has Jupiter and Neptune in the 12th house. Typically, these actresses tend to have very strong 12th houses. Jupiter likes the 12th house. Remember, the classic rulerships of Jupiter are Sagittarius, which is 9th house, and Pisces in the 12th house. In the 12th house, she works hard. Jupiter in Capricorn. Neptune, imagination. In an imaginative space, she is very energetic. It's also Jupiter. She's willing to do these athletic things, like be, connected to wires and flown through the air in a protected space, because it's Capricorn related to her work. And she has Saturn that rules Aquarius in the 3rd house, a Mercury-ruled house, in Aries, a Mars-ruled sign. Conjunct the South Node, Juno, and Hygeia. South Node in Aries, conjunct Saturn. She had a lot of reincarnational experiences doing very physical things. Okay? Now, where her fear of heights comes from, that probably has to do with that Ceres. Ceres a lot of times relates to fear of height, and it's fairly close to the midheaven in Sagittarius. Pluto's there as well. She probably had some issues in previous lifetimes with falling. So, it's understandable. She has Vesta at the midheaven in Scorpio. This is funny. This is actually something that we saw with, let's see, who else did we just see this with? It wasn't Margot Robbie. Oh, yes, Margot Robbie had the same position. She had Vesta in Taurus at the midheaven. Vesta at the midheaven tends to make a feminine ideal. What's interesting with Zendaya is that her Vesta is conjunct within 2 degrees of the midheaven in Scorpio. That's a very sexy position. It's also late in the sign at 28 degrees. The midheaven is 26 degrees. Very late in the sign. She comes across as very much a feminine ideal that's also very sexual, very powerful. Which, if you see her, she's just a little slip of a girl. But she's a very, very talented actress. But she has a lot of power implicit in that. And both she and Margot Robbie have that ideal in concept. They're seen as an ideal. With Margot Robbie, it's in Taurus. With Zendaya, it's the opposite sign. It's in the Mars-ruled sign. And once again, it goes back to that Mars in Cancer. So it's a very, very feminine chart, and yet it's got a Saturn-ruled sign rising. It's got a Venus-ruled moon in Taurus. So she's got the moon in Taurus trine the sun in Virgo, with the moon in the 4th house. You actually would call this what's called an accidental dignity, which is really not the proper term. But what it means is when you find a planet in the house that it naturally relates to, like Jupiter in the 12th house, it makes the planet stronger. And it really is a planet which is, you might say it's empowered by position, would be the better way to describe it. So that moon in Taurus really, feels comfortable there. It's in Taurus. The thing that's funny about the moon in the 4th house, they will tend to move a lot because the moon moves. And the moon in the 4th house, which is the sense of home, people will tend to move a lot. They're very quick to say, let's move someplace else. And I bet she has lived a bunch of different places since she became successful. The Jupiter in the 12th house, once again, is a great love of travel. And the 12th house is a Jupiter house. Has a lot to do with travel. But the moon in the 4th house, she has a very strong family foundation. Probably loves great foods, which is funny because she's so slender. But the moon in Taurus, she has a great sense of the arts. Mercury and Libra, the arts, moon and Taurus. So she has major planets in both of the arts-ruled signs, Libra and Taurus, from the 9th house to the 4th house. 2 powerful houses for that. So she has these empowered houses, the Jupiter in the 12th, the moon in the 4th. What else do we have? Anything? Another thing that's interesting, too. We mentioned about the Vesta, highly elevated conjunct the midheaven. Also in that 10th house is Pallas Athena, the warrior goddess, also in Scorpio, right? So it was, once again, this very strong sense of her being an ideal. But it's funny because it goes back to the Mars, Venus in Cancer. So even though you get the sense of this power it comes back to these very feminine signs: Cancer, Taurus, femininity. I mean, scratch the surface of, you know, the Aquarius rising, which tends to makes people unusual looking. Kind of interesting. There's a lot of Aquarians in movie because the Aquarians tend to be unusual looking, but the Aquarius rising tends to make her unusual looking in some ways. Scratch that surface, you know, that Saturn and Aries. Scratch that surface. Underneath, she's very feminine. She's a very feminine person. You know, she's and very, you know, very in touch with her feminine power. So like I said, she spans this. She has some of that martial quality. She has some of that feminine power, but she's not overt about it. She's kind of protective of it. And very, very different from these other charts, if you've been following this series. You know, very different. She's not as quick to get into stuff. You know, she's not, you know, the only thing that she has in Gemini is Selena, which is a nodal point in the 5th house. She's not quick to get into stuff. She'll go into situations and work at it because there's power. It matters because it matters. She has a chart that's very good at recognizing what matters. But like I said, when you meet her, what she is reading about you is not what you're reading about her. With that Aquarius rising and Uranus conjunct, she's picking up a lot of energy. What people pick up about her is actually that Saturn in the 3rd house. Her youth, her youthfulness, her hard work. People pick that up. And then that moon in Taurus, they pick that up. But they miss that Uranus rising. But until it gets on the screen. Probably when it gets on the screen, it translates. And that's where the excitement shows up. You know, I bet if you took a picture of Herculean photography of her aura, it'd have a lot of, like, little lightning bolts in it. A lot of, you know, sharp white sparks coming off from that Uranus rising in Aquarius. So that's the chart. Like I said, it's quite a departure from our other actresses, but I thought it'd make an interesting bridge, you might say. Zendaya. Come see us at Planetary Calendar Astrology with Ralph Lahni on YouTube. Please subscribe and also click the little red button so you know you get notified, because we do our new portraits, our educational portraits, every Tuesday, and we do our forecasts from the planetary calendar, the day planner and the calendar, on Fridays for the coming week. And of course, you can go to planetarycalendar.com to find those, because you're going to want to know what's going on. Until next time, be well.